Greetings. Today I am going to run you through backing up your WordPress site. Now there are many methodologies for accomplishing this. The one that I'm currently using on my sites and the sites that I'm building is a plugin called BackWPup. And you install that as you do any normal plugin. Go to Add New, in the search type BackWPup. It'll come up, you install now, you activate it, there you go. That's where that is. It will create a menu item over here called BackWPup. Imagine that. Now, I am going to run through this. I've removed all the jobs that I had created in here, and so I'm going to start this the way it would go if you were installing this from scratch. So the first thing you're going to want to do is, and this is your dashboard, and it's got some information here that you can read, and you can see here I had some backups built in here, and it tells you when they're run, and it gives you a bunch of great information and things like that. Once you install this, the first thing you've got to do is create some jobs. So if you look over here, you're going to see Add New Job. That's where you want to go. Now typically I do two different kinds of jobs, and there's all sorts of assorted options. We'll see those as we go through. I create a job that creates a full backup of the website, everything in here, everything that can be backed up, and then I create a job that backs up the WordPress database and emails that database to me. So we will start, the first thing we'll do is create the database backup. So you have to name it. So I typically call these database email to Skippy. Now the job task, this is a database backup. It is not a file backup. File backup means backing up the files on your server. I am going to put in a WordPress XML export, and what that is if you go into one WordPress installation and you want to move all of your pages and posts from that WordPress, say at x.com, to a new site at y.com, you do an XML export, and then you import that export file over at your new domain, and it transfers all of your pages and posts from one website to another website. So that's what that does. Now the only thing you really need here is the database backup, but I snag these other things just because I can. Installed plugins list, what that will do is just generate a list of the plugins that you have installed. So let's say your website crashed and you had to rebuild it from scratch. You probably may not remember all the plugins you had installed on that website. So it's like, what plugin was I using for this? I don't remember the name of it. So this just creates a list of those plugins, and that way if you have to reinstall, you know what you're looking for. And then check database tables. This just performs a check on your database to check the sanity of the database. Alright, archive name. And this plugin also has really good pop-up help. You'll see as we're going through this video, when I mouse over things, you'll see these pop-up help screens appear that give you lots of great information. Now typically for this I leave the file name, and here it shows you a preview of what the file name is going to look like. I leave this just like it is. All I do is I add a prefix. So this is my testing site. So I'm going to call that testing. And then I put a dash, and then I'm going to put DB for database. So I know that this backup is for my testing website, and I know it's the database. When I get to the other one, I'll call it full instead of DB. Then this BackWPup, name of the plugin. This is your year, your month, your day, and the time of day. Now this little random bit here, you want to leave this in here. That is a randomized character, and the reason, and we'll talk about this a little bit more when we get to file saving locations, but the reason you want these random characters in there is that prevents somebody from snagging these backups off of your website. So when you get to the point where you're saving these files to your server, if anybody knows the name of the file, they could go to your website and find it. So these randomized letters in here help prevent that from happening, and we'll see that a little bit more in action later on. Now, archive format, you can zip it, you can tar it, you can tar gzip, you can tar bzip. If all of that, you're like, what does that mean? Don't worry about it. If you're using Linux, I don't need to explain this to you. If you're using a Windows system, I don't know about Mac because I don't use Macs. Mac should handle a tar just fine. However, Mac should handle these fine. I usually just go with the tar the tar gzipped unless we need to do something. Otherwise, if you're in Windows, you may or may not have software to handle that. You may need a zip file, but we'll come around to that. I'll show you how to deal with all of those things. So we leave it right there. Job destination. In this case, we're going to back up via email. Now, you can do multiple, so we can back this up to the folder and via email. So I'm going to go ahead and click both just for the fun of it right now. All right, and then send log, email from, and log file. Send email with log only when errors occur. I always leave this checked, otherwise you'll get a log file every time it runs. You only want to get a log file if there's an error. That way you know something went wrong. All right, and as we go through each one of these, be sure to hit Save Changes. And it's going to pull that email address out of whatever you have in as your administrator email. All right, changes are saved. Schedule. You can schedule these backups to happen automatically. Manual only means it will run only when you tell it to run. With WordPress cron is the easy way to do it. You can come in here, just keep your scheduler on basic. You can select monthly, weekly, daily, hourly, and you tell it when to go. So monthly, on the 10th at, this is in military time, at 1800 hours or 1815. If you're going to run backups automatically, it's usually best to run your automatic backups early in the morning when there's not a lot of traffic on your website. And then you can also run this by just clicking on a link. If I take this link right here and I say bookmark that link, anytime I click on that link, it will cause this to automatically run. Not something you will particularly want to do all that often. I don't know for sure why you'd want to do it that way. Well, it would allow you to back up your site without having to log in, but back it up whenever you want it to back it up instead of backing it up on a pre-programmed schedule. All right, so for our purposes, we're leaving this on manual, nothing here to do. Database backup. Here, it's showing me all of the tables that are in my database. If you don't know what each of these tables is, and whether you need the data, then leave everything checked. Everything should be checked. Again, if you know what you're doing, you're probably not watching this video. So for quote-unquote normal people, just leave everything checked. It's going to show you the backup file name. You don't want to change that. That's the name of your database file. File compression, I don't compress these because the entire thing will all be compressed. When each of these files is individually generated, they're going to be compressed. So we don't want to double compress them. So you leave compression on none. We didn't change anything, so we don't need to hit Save Changes. Xml Export. Again, this creates an export file, so if you wanted to import your website content to a new website, just leave it on All Content. Export file name will be fine with the defaults. No file compression. Nothing else to do here. Plugins. So this is your plugin list. Again, it's going to show you the name, and we see here it's plugin list. Don't compress it. Nothing to do here. Database check. Check WordPress database tables only. Go ahead and check that. And that's, again, this is how it will be when you install this. I do not do the repair because if I'm going to try to repair my tables, I want to do that myself manually. So nothing else to do here. All right, to folder. This is where it's going to store the database when you create it. File deletion, number of files to keep in folder. Now here, I usually drop this down. I'm going to drop this down to 6. The reason you want to do that is, especially if you have a large website, if you create a backup of all the files on your website, then you're doubling the size of your website, you're doubling the size of storage space you're using on your website host. And so then if you do it, say you've got automated backups going, if you do a backup every week, in 3 weeks, you've quadrupled the amount of space you're using on your server. And hosting companies don't particularly appreciate this. So if you are doing full backups of your website on a regular basis, be sure you download those and delete the files from your server. Otherwise, you can get in trouble with your hosting company. Now here, you'll see it's going to, and you can change this. So this is the folder where you're going to store backups. But the default is in your WP content, and then your uploads, and then it's going to create a folder, BackWPup, and again, it's going to give it this random character generation, and then backups. So that if this plugin always stored things, say for example, just in WP content, uploads, backup, then somebody knowing you have a WordPress site, knowing the structure of your directories, could just directly access that folder and download the backup of your website, which would have your WordPress database in it, which will have your passwords in it. So this would be hacker's paradise. This is another good reason not to leave your backup files on your site, because if somebody gets access to them and if they have the database in there, then this person will be able to get to your WordPress password. Like I said, you can completely change the URL or the folder, however you want to think about it, to where this backup is stored. So you don't have to put it in WP content uploads. You can put it wherever you want. All right. So I changed the number of files that are going to be saved. So, and then what this means is if you say your backups are running automatically, when there's 6 backup files in there, when another one runs and there would be 7 backup files, the oldest backup file will automatically be deleted. So like I say, this is the way you keep your backups from becoming too many and getting in trouble with your hosting company. We're going to save changes. Always save changes. All right, and then to email. So here we've got our email. This is where the email is going to be sent. You can send a test email. So click on that, and it will attempt sending a test email to that address. Maximum file size, 20 megabytes should be fine. Sender's email address, sender's name, that's great. Sending method, you've got a couple of different methods here. Again, stick with use site settings, and that will probably work. So if everything worked there, you'll get this email sent message, and the email should appear in your email folder. We will not go looking for that right now. And there it is. We hit save changes. I didn't change anything in here. You can hit save changes. It won't hurt nothing. Now, up in your menu, you'll see that you've got in your top bar menu, you'll see you've got a BackWPup. You can come down here and you see jobs and see database email sent to Skippy and run now. So if we click on run now, it is going to run the job that we just created. And here we see it's doing its thing. It's pretty self-explanatory. You want to watch up here. You have warnings and errors. Errors usually aren't a crisis. Warnings are not a crisis. If you see errors, then that means something is in fact wrong. We can display the working log, and it will show you a log of what happened. And errors are usually highlighted in yellow. Warnings are highlighted in yellow. Errors are highlighted in red. We don't see anything in there, so everything went fine. Now we want to create a full backup for the site. So again, it's WordPress. There's always lots of ways you can get there. You can come over here and click add a new job, or you can come up here and go to jobs, and you'll see that the now running, this is where you can abort a job that's currently running. The job is actually finished running. The menu item is just still there. So typically you won't see this unless you're actually running a job or just finished running a job. We can click add new up here, and it will create for us a new job. All right, this one is going to be our full backup. So we're going to call it full site backup. if I can type. I want everything. And again, down here, I've got to name my file. I'm going to call it testing and full, so that I know it's from my testing site and I know it's the full backup. Everything else I'm just going to leave alone. I'm going to tar gzip it. We're going to back this up to a folder. I'm not going to send this via email, because if your site is large, we're going to back up everything on the website. So it's going to be a huge file depending on the size of your site. And you can see here you can also back up to FTP. If you have an FTP account, like say you have your own server or whatever, this backup can be sent from your website to that server. If you have a FTP account somewhere where you pay to store files, you can send this to Dropbox, you can send this to S3, you can send this to whatever this is. I've never used that. Rackspace Cloud Files, SugarSync. I don't know what any of those things are. S3, that's the Amazon storage. Dropbox is an online storage. So anyhow, same stuff. Log files, where do you send it? Email from it. You can leave all that just like it is. We're going to save changes. Okay, schedule. Now again, typically for me, my full site backups, I do in fact schedule them. I run them once a week, and then I download that and save it. This is my testing site. I don't need to back this up on a regular basis. And I also don't feel like updating my video driver right this minute. Thank you so much for that notification. The bad thing about updating video drivers is it always destroys my icons. Anyway, you don't care about that. We're talking about WordPress. So again, if you want to do the WordPress cron, you can schedule it weekly, monthly, daily, hourly. We're going to stick with manual. We'll save changes. We didn't change anything here, but that's fine. Database backup. Same thing as last time. You're going to leave everything checked. And again, everything should be checked. And that's the name of the database. You don't want to compress it. Files. Now, so this will be new from what we saw previously. Here we are looking at what files do you want to back up. And it's going to show you the full path name to where all of your files are at. So now, backup root folder. So if this is checked, it's going to back up that folder. Underneath it is the things you can exclude. So for example, here we're backing up all the way down to WP content, but there's an upgrade subfolder. You can exclude that. You don't need to back that up. These are all your plugin directories. So this is your root. You always want your root. This is your content folder. You always want your content folder, even if you don't get the root and the plugin and everything else. So with WordPress, the most important things to back up are the database, which I showed you how to do, and this folder right here, your WP content. Your WP content is, unless you've changed things, where any files you've uploaded, like pictures or PDFs or so forth and so on, all of that stuff is stored in there. So those are the two most important things on your WordPress installation. You can reinstall WordPress from scratch. You can reinstall your plugins. You can reinstall your themes, unless you've customized your theme. If you created child themes or done customization, then you need to have that backed up. So this one is really important, your WP content. But again, in this case, I'm backing up all the files, or almost all the files, on my installation, and you'll see that as we go by. So here's all the plugins I have installed, and BackWPup excludes itself, which you can do that or you cannot do that. We're going to unexclude it, so it'll back this up. Here's my theme directory. I've got a bunch of themes in here, again, because this is where I test stuff. Typically, I would never have this many themes on a website, because you should only have the theme you're using and perhaps the latest WordPress official backup theme as a fallback, because any additional code on your site you're not using, plugins, themes, whatever, all of these things present the possibility of creating a security hole in which a hacker could get into your website. So any themes or plugins installed on your website that you're not actively using, you should delete them. Again, I'm breaking all the rules here because this is a site I test on, and so I turn things off and change them and all this other stuff. All right, backup uploads folder. Now here, you'll see these are grayed out and checked because these are the folders created by BackWPup. There's a temp folder, and then this is where it does all of its processing. There's a log folder where it stores the logs, and then this is the folder where it actually puts the backups. You definitely want to exclude that. And everything else. Now this, because again this is a testing site, I've done this a couple of times. Here's another BackWPup temp from a previous uses of this plugin. I want to exclude that. Subthemes I can keep, that's fine. All of that is fine. All of that is fine. All of that is fine. So any BackWPup folders, you want to go ahead and exclude those from being backed up. Again, especially the actual backup folders, because if you don't check the backup folder, now you're going to back up all the files on your website, and into that backup file you're going to add any existing backups. So your first backup would be all the files on your website. Your second backup would include all the files on your website and the first backup. So that backup file is going to be twice the size. Then you do your next backup, it includes 2 backup files and all the files on your website. That's going to be 3 times the size, and you're very quickly going to really piss off your hosting company if you do that. So make sure that's done. Extra folders to back up. If there's a folder on your server outside of your WordPress installation, then you could put the path to that folder in here. If you don't know what I'm talking about, then you probably don't have that problem. Alright, exclude. Don't back up thumbnails from the site's upload folder. You can, you can't. If you don't back these up, the thumbnails would have to be regenerated if you have to reinstall. But it's not that big of a deal. You can go ahead and just leave that unchecked. Exclude these from backup. Again, go ahead and just leave that alone. That should be fine. If you know what's going on, you will know what you need to change there. Include special files. Yes, go ahead and leave this checked. You want your WP config PHP and your robots text and your htaccess and favicon, all this other good stuff. So you want to keep all that. Alright, hit save changes now. And XML export, not import, export. Same thing we saw last time. Leave it all content, no file compression. Plugins. Now, of course, you've backed up all of your actual plugin files and directories, but this will generate the list of all the plugins. Nothing to change here. Leave it alone. Database check. Check database tables only. Leave everything else alone. It's great. To folder. Now this time we're not going to see, and we notice we don't see an email because we're not emailing this. So again, what's the folder we're storing the backups in? It should by default be the same folder that we had last time, regardless of if you're doing a partial backup, a full backup, a database backup, whatever. They should all go into the same folder. Although again, you can change all of this. You can send them in different places if you want. And I'm going to go ahead and change this to 6 again, because this file deletion setting, when you do it in here, is not a global setting. So again, let's say you are putting your databases in one folder. You could say keep the last 10 databases, but then say you're putting your full backup into a different folder. You could say only keep the last 3 full backups from the website. So those are not global settings. These settings apply only to this job. Alright, if we go up here and we mouse jobs, we're going to see now it says full site backup. And you can click on run now and run it. Now over here, also you'll see here jobs. So if we click on jobs, it's going to show you all the jobs that you've programmed. And there's a database email to Skippy, full site backup. You can see when you mouse over it, like as typically happens in WordPress, you've got a little menu that pops up. You can edit that job. You can copy that job. It'll take all those settings and create a copy of that job. So let's say you wanted to do another database email backup, but you want to send it to a different email address. You just copy this, you go in, you change only the email address, everything else will stay the same. You can delete the entire job. You can run the job now. Here it tells you the type. It tells you what you're backing up, your destination. Here you see we're going to email and folder. Here it's folder. Next, run. If it's scheduled to run automatically, this will tell you the next time it's scheduled to run. Here it tells you the last time it ran, the date, the time, how long it took. It took 13 seconds. Here you can click on this and download that. Here you can click on this, view the log. All right. What we will do now is we will run full site backup. Now with the full site backup, this is going to take depending on the size of your site. See here we got a warning, file size, this particular file, it's an error log, a file might be too large, not added to queue. It's just some kind of error log for something. I don't care about that. I don't need any error logs. If anything, I should probably go inside and take a look at that and delete it or something if it's actually that big. Depending on the size of your website, this could take a significant amount of time to run. And this website here, I don't have a lot of content on this website, but I do have a lot of files because of all the plugins and themes that I have. And right now we are compressing the files. La 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 la. La 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 la. This is a good time to take a drink of hot tea. If you have some hot tea, it's cloudy and chilly outside today, so have me a nice glass of, or cup, mug, whatever that word is, mug. Mug of hot tea. Yummy, yummy, yummy. And it's going, and it's going. Again, so far we only have the one error, which is a good thing. Yep. Yep, we're getting there. Yep. So this is the excitement. This is where it's at. Ah, here we go. All right. Took us 139 seconds. And we had 2 warnings. Display working log. Let's see. Yep, see there's a warning. It's in yellow. That's that first one we had. And our warning. Okay, so the second warning was just the fact that we had a warning. So that was our only problem right there. I'm actually going to go in and take a look at that file and see what's going on with that. But that is not a crisis. Now, next, we come down here and you see here backups. Click on backups. This is going to show us the backups we've created. Here it shows you the folder, where it's located at, how large it is. So our full backup of the website is 38 megabytes. Our database is 606K. So again, here you see testing full. There's our dates, testing the database, blah, blah, blah. We want to get these files off of the server and onto our local computer. To do that, you click on download. And we're going to save it. And we're going to drop it onto the desktop. And I'm going to go ahead and get the database. Also, download it. Save it to the desktop. Alright, now, next thing I'm going to do once we got these is I'm going to show you how to check these and make sure they're actually good files. In the past, I was using a different backup plugin for backing up my WordPress information, and at some point I started looking at the backup files it was generating and found out that a good 50% of them were corrupt and therefore unusable. And that's when I went on this quest and found BackWPup and switched over to this one. So it's important to not just assume that your backup files are actually usable. You need to check on this stuff. How do you check on this stuff? Here's how you do it. Now, there are, again, depending what operating system you're using. Again, if you're on Linux, I don't know why you're watching this video, because you probably know everything that I've said so far. You probably may even know more than I do, which is pretty likely. If you're on Mac, click on it. It'll probably handle itself because that's how Macintosh computers are designed. If you're on Windows, there are assorted programs you can install. I believe Windows comes with built-in support for zip files, but I use a program called pzip. And these are not zip files, these are tar.gz files. So a tarball is a collection of files put into one file, and then the gzipping is when you compress that. So that's what, when somebody says a tarball, they're talking about essentially it's the same thing as a zip file. So all we got to do, I have pzip installed, so all we got to do is double click on one of these, and we're going to get this. Again, this program right here is called pzip. And if you, P-E-A-Z-I-P, pzip. If you don't have this, if you don't have something on your computer that handles tarballs, just, go into Google, look for pzip download it, install it. It's completely free. There's no spam, there's no adware. I've been using it for years. And here it's showing us, so we've entered the zip file and there's a tarball. If we double click on this, it should open up the tarball. Cross fingers, there we go. And now we're seeing all the files and stuff that are inside of here. Now this is not a tree view. The first time I opened one of these, it's like, oh my god, this is not. And let me see if that does it. And yep. Alright, see, this is me putzing around because, and I'm partially putzing around because I never really do this in Windows. I always do this in Linux because there are better tools in Linux for doing these things. Again, if you're in Linux, I don't have to tell you that. So I am just going to exit out of this, and I'm going to exit out of that. Here's our database. I'm going to double click on that, and we see here is everything. Now the easy way to check all of this stuff is to run a test on it. Again, if you have pzip, it can or cannot be in your menu items up here. If it is, and depending on what options you selected when you installed it, you right click on a file, on a archive file of some type, and it'll say test archives. Click on test archive, and it will start testing that archive. And comes back, that's what you're looking for, is everything is okay. And that tells us what we need to know. If you don't have that in your right click menu, you just double click on the archive file that opens in pzip, and you see your test button is right here. You're going to hit test. It's going to run the test process, and again it's going to tell us everything is okay. That's what you're looking for. Like I said, extracting. Navigating the zip files in Windows is typically something I don't do, which is why ideally you would be able to display all of this as a tree the same way you would see it on your server instead of everything just being dumped into one thing. But I don't know how to do that right offhand with pzip because I never do that with pzip. Like I said, I always do this sort of thing from inside Linux where there are much better tools for it. But the point is, the important point here is, other than me floundering around trying to show you how to use pzip, is you just need to test the archives and make sure they're functional. If they are corrupt, you're not going to get the everything is okay. If they're corrupt, they are completely useless. So make sure your archive files are good to go. And now if you ever need to restore this, again, that's something where you don't necessarily need to know and understand, and I'm not going to do it in this video, how to get the information out of these zip files or out of these tarballs and back onto your system. That's, hopefully it never happens. If it does, you find somebody who knows what they're doing, they'll be able to breeze through all of this. The important thing for on your part, as the person who owns the website and keeps track of it and everything else, you need to just back up on a regular basis, especially your database. Do a full site backup every now and then. If you're not going to do the entire site, at least do the WP content, but you got to back up your database. You can never back up too many databases. Never back up your database too often is slightly more correct English. I'm not an English teacher. That's why I do this, because I can just go, I don't know what I'm talking about. Words, I'm so confused. Back up your databases, and the file size on your databases is going to be fairly small, again, unless you have a huge website. Keep the last 3 months worth of your, when I have my databases emailed to me. I keep at least the last 3 months worth of databases, because if your website gets destroyed, gets infected with a virus, something like that, you're going to need those to be able to go back and repair it. And there it is. That is the backing up of the WordPress. Quick, easy intro video. So if you have no idea what you're doing, that is what you're doing, my friends. Go back up your website now before it crashes. Thanks a lot for watching, and y'all have fun.